Hey folks, Pat here from DNS. This Madison area fishing report is current as of September 1st. Well, here we are, Labor Day weekend already. Summer sure did blow by. I hope those of you that have an extended weekend coming up, hope you're able to get out and enjoy the last bits of summer here because, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, winter's right around the corner. Um, I guess before we get started, just a couple quick things. I wanted to remind folks that the Marshall Park boat launch is going to be closed Wednesday, September 6th through Sunday, September 10th. So that would be next weekend coming up here. But there's a big sailing event going on down there. So they'll be putting their boats in and out there. So they got the launch closed down. These folks have done a nice job reaching out to people, putting a flyer up here at the shop. I saw they got a sign down there at Marshall Park announcing the closure too. So I hope they have a safe and fun event. And yeah, if you want to launch at Marshall, just find somewhere else, I guess. The other news going on is that hook and line sturgeon fishing opens tomorrow. So sturgeon, super cool fish in my opinion, super prehistoric looking. Obviously they get huge. That season is open from September 2nd to September 30th. You don't see a lot of sturgeon around here in Madison, but up on the river, they're pretty plentiful. You can see a photo here of the shop's very own Harley was out this last week. Got a beautiful sturgeon here looking for catfish, but he's rocking the DNS shirt. Love to see that. And yeah, so hook and line sturgeon going on starting tomorrow. You don't need a sturgeon tag to fish for them. You do need a sturgeon tag if you plan to keep them. Fish have to be 60 inches. And I don't know, I guess people smoke them or something like that, but it's a great fight, great fish, and they're pretty active this time of year and pretty easy to catch. Really, it's just a gob of worms on the bottom. So if you want to try something new or are into that, it's a pretty great time. I guess as far as the report goes, it was dry this last week with perfect temps in the mid to upper 70s. So I hope folks were able to get out and enjoy the nice weather. It looks like some heat moving in this weekend and into next week. The forecast also looks dry, which makes for comfortable fishing, but we sure could use the rain, at least here in the Madison area. The buoy on Lake Mendota has actually been down for the last few weeks, so I don't have an accurate water temp for you, but I did see online earlier this week, Mendota and Waubesa were both right around 75 degrees. So these cooler temps have helped bring the temps down from last week. The nice temps that we had all this week had quite a few folks getting out on the water, and the fishing's been good. Sounds like floating weeds are causing problems depending on wind and where you're at. The Dane County beach water quality website here has all the beaches open, so that's a good sign for water quality. Although I have heard a couple complaints about poor water quality on Lake Mendota, at least. Gills are still being found on weed lines on Lake Mendota and suspended over deep water pretty much everywhere else on the chain, with redworms and spikes working well for those fish. Perch action remains spotty on Mendota and elsewhere. Largemouth bass are being found shallow around the chain, and smallmouth bass and walleye are being picked up in good numbers on shoreline breaks and mid-lake humps, with crawlers and fathead minnows working well for those fish. Pike are plentiful, and it sounds like the muskie action's picked up a bit. Area streams are running a little low and clear, but the cooler temps have put the trout in a good mood, and local rivers are also running pretty low right now. And I do want to remind folks with this heat coming in, do make sure you're checking water temps. And if you're over 80 degrees for muskie and 67 degrees for trout, let's give those fish a break until things cool down again. Up here on the north side, up Cherokee Park, the weeds are dying back a little bit, or at least coming down a little bit. So some decent pockets up there, especially if you're running a topwater frog or something, good opportunities for some bass in pockets that are starting to show up in the Cherokee Park area. Otherwise, if you've got a canoe and can launch, or a small boat or kayak or something, can launch here at the School Road launch, get out into the channel out here. And folks have been doing well for pike and bass out there all summer. Down to the 113 bridge, I guess the biggest news down there is that the construction's done on this stretch of the highway, so you can park on the sides of the road again, and that's good news for the shore anglers that fish down here. Otherwise, it's been a nice mixed bag of fish coming out of there. You never really know what you'll find. I heard about a big walleye coming out of there earlier this week, but catfish is pretty much the name of the game down there, and they are still getting some beautiful fish down there, mostly on worms and stink bait, but I do hear about folks picking up fish on cut bait as well. Lake Mendota, usually perch is the name of the game out here in late summer. I do occasionally hear good reports of perch on weed lines and out a little deeper, but it sounds like most of the fish folks are finding are small. with the keepers remaining pretty elusive. A few folks are getting larger fish if you can punch through the weeds or find small pockets. The good news is the gills are keeping folks busy on the weed lines with a few of those Mendota dinner plate jumbos showing up. Please do consider releasing those trophies to help preserve the fishery. Nothing wrong with keeping fish to eat, but those jumbos really should go back because they're important to keep the great fishery going here. I do hear about the occasional crappie here and there, but those fish are scattered at best. Crappie have been picked up here and there, but those fish are scattered at best. Most panfish are liking a small jig tipped with a spike or a redworm, with the occasional walleye and smallmouth bass grabbing those jigs as well. Largemouth bass action remains good up shallow, and smallmouth bass action has been great on outside weed edges and mid-lake humps. Noah Humfeld has been having a lot of success drop-shotting smallmouth bass with a small hook and 1/3 of a crawler out there. But shore anglers have also been doing well with swim baits in areas closer to deeper water. Like look at Picnic Point, University Shoreline, Governor's Island, stuff like that. Has also been producing some great smallmouth action. So all over Mendota, really. Walleye action seems to have picked up a little bit with the cooler temps this last week. Folks are getting a lot of those fish on mid-lake humps and shoreline breaks. Our jumbo fatheads and blacktail chubs have been working well for those fish, but folks trolling crawlers and crankbaits are getting fish as well. I do hear about catfish mixing things up for folks, whether they're pan fishing or walleye fishing. They've been finding fish out there in the boats, and that always makes for an interesting fight when you're not expecting a 20-pound fish on the line. Over here to the Tenney Park break wall, they've been getting some fish there at dark, whether it's in the morning or evening. The Tenney Park locks have been pushing more water through lately, so there's some good bluegill action up in the river and some walleyes being picked up. Otherwise, the lagoon has your typical small bluegills and some really nice largemouth action to be had in there. Down on Lake Monona, the slimy filamentous algae can be a problem in spots and floating weeds too, depending on where you're at and which way the wind's blowing. But otherwise, gills a few are being picked up on weed lines. Most of the gills I hear about are being picked up over deep water. So anywhere from 30 feet to 70 feet, but all these fish are about 15-ish feet down, sometimes a little shallower, sometimes a little deeper. But yeah, big schools of them out there, so just drifting around, and small ice fishing jig over the side of the boat can be super productive. Otherwise, they're getting fish down here at the Monona Terrace Wall, some good bluegill action during the day. You got to sort through some fish to find some keepers, it sounds like, but also a good crappie bite down there in the evening, and that should only improve as we move into fall here. Otherwise, down Monona Bay and Brittingham Park area, they've been doing well with panfish, bass, and pike. Nice mixed bag of fish down there. Lake Winger's got the usual tiny bluegills, but also some decent largemouth bass action and muskie in there too. Speaking of muskie, I have heard about a few decent catches coming off Lake Monona lately, so it's nice to see that action improve. But again, with these warm temps, you're going to want to keep an eye on water temps if you're chasing muskie. Over here to Upper Mud, been hearing about some good bass action, pulling topwater frogs over the thick weed mats over here. Otherwise, some good action where the channel comes through here for pike and bass in there too. Down on Wabisa, pretty much the same deal as Monona. Few fish on the weed lines, but most of your fish you're going to find are out over deep water, 15-ish feet down. Ice fishing jig with a spike or a redworm is hard to beat. Otherwise, I've been hearing about a few walleye over in the Babcock Park Bible Camp area over here. And muskie action down there is about the same as Monona too, so a few muskies getting picked up. Otherwise, down on Kegonsa, kind of the same deal down there. Bluegills out over deep water, suspended. You can pick up a few on weed lines, but most of them are out suspended over deep water. Some real nice gills down here in Kegonsa. It seems like they're just a little bit different breed of fish. Nice thick ones, pretty fish. But do practice catch and release on some of those real jumbos if you could. Otherwise, I do hear about some spotty walleye action around the state park over there. Over on Lake Koshkonong, still sounds like a pea soup mess down there with a blue-green algae bloom going on. I have heard about some crappie and white bass being picked up where the Rock River comes in here and up towards Black Hawk Island. Otherwise, and some small walleyes in there too. Otherwise, the Indian Ford Dam and Jefferson Dams have been producing the usual mixed bag of fish with some good catfish, flathead catfish showing up. Up to Beaver Dam, they got a good eater catfish bite going on over there. Castle Rock, I'm sorry, um, Crystal Lake over here is a good yellow bass bite going on with crappie in the evening. Haven't heard much out of Devil's Lake State Park, but I imagine the trout are still deep over there and pretty active. Otherwise, like I mentioned in the intro, the Wisconsin River is running real low. Got sturgeon season coming up though, so look to deeper water to find all species of fish really. Smallmouth bass action's been great all summer and is only really going to get better as we move into fall here. Look again for deeper water, which is easy to find with the water levels being low, and that's where you're going to find fish. So, corners, backsides of sandbars, wood can also be very productive, but great action for topwater frogs up and down the river. Large schools of shad out there for whatever reason. A great shad population right now, so the smallmouth are chasing them around. And all you really got to look for when you're out there is watch for these fish busting those shad on the surface, and then you just toss any type of a minnow imitation in there and hold on to your rod. It can be pretty fast and furious action. So a great way to get on those fish this time of year. Otherwise, the Sauk Dam up here has got a nice mixed bag of fish. Catfish up there too, sturgeon, stuff like that. Lake Wisconsin, I haven't heard a ton out of Lake Wisconsin other than some folks getting good numbers of fish, but not necessarily what they're looking for. The walleye sound like they've been on the small side lately, but a lot of sheepshead, white bass, catfish, keeping folks busy. I do hear about some decent panfish action near wood, both gills and crappies. Otherwise, up the river, I haven't heard much out of Portage up to the Dells, but some fantastic smallmouth water in there too. Dells Dam, I had a few folks coming through here picking up a nice mixed bag of fish, although I haven't heard about anything too insane up that way. Otherwise, up to the Castle Rock and Petenwell dams, great mixed bag of fish there. Sturgeon, flatheads, anything that swims in the river can be caught at these dams, and it's a great opportunity for a great place to find concentrated fish. Otherwise, some decent walleye action coming out of Castle Rock and Petenwell, but it doesn't sound like really much to write home about necessarily. It sounds like the bluegill bite up there has been pretty good near wood. Bluegills and some crappies being picked up there too. Over to the Mississippi River, sounds like panfish action's been good. Had quite a few guys coming through the shop, hitting weed lines up there on the river, up and down the river. Wing dams have been good for walleye and smallmouth. Smallmouth coming on topwater, poppers and stuff like that have been good. Otherwise, over to Milwaukee here, the rivers over there are all running really low, but that again concentrates the smallmouth in deeper pockets. Heard about some good topwater action for those fish with a few pike mixed in. Charters are doing well for kings and cohos. It sounds like those fish are starting to move a little bit shallower, and it won't be long before they're in the harbors over here getting ready to do their fall spawn, which is always a very exciting time up and down the East Coast. I have heard about a nice, good perch bite up on Lake Winnebago if you feel like taking a little road trip. Otherwise, trout fishing around Madison's been good. The cooler temps had the fish in a good mood. I made a post about this. Got hippie stompers in here at the shop, and I also forgot to post about this beautiful smallmouth my friend Jeff got on the Wisconsin River, 22 inches, beautiful markings on that fish, and also on the fly rod. Otherwise, terrestrial season is in full swing here. These hippie stompers represent a lot of things. It's a very popular fly locally, and we got a bunch in the shop here, purple, red, and orange. I was fishing with one this last weekend and did well. Otherwise, any hopper imitation is going to be your safest bet, although you will find mayflies and caddisflies coming off early in the morning and just before dark. But if fish aren't looking up, you got woolly buggers and nymphs can be very effective. Otherwise, on the terrestrial side of things too, don't forget about beetles and ants, crickets, all those things are on trout's menu this time of year. On the non-fly side of things, panther martins, tube jigs, rapalas are all fantastic. And really, as always, it's hard to beat a redworm under a bobber drifted through a run or a deep pool. Otherwise, and again, watch water temps this week with the heat for trout. I guess that pretty much does it for the report. Post your comments and catches below. Love to see those down there. And yeah, otherwise, um, if call the shop here at 241-4225 if you want us to expand on anything here. Otherwise, yeah, enjoy the Labor Day weekend and appreciate you tuning in and good luck out there. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.